So if you're like a white or Asian female, you got to be weightlifting.
Yeah.
And the earlier the better, right? It's much easier to put on bone when you're in your like 20s.
What age would you say that like women should really start incorporating that into their, as soon as possible would that be your answer?
As soon as possible.
You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week, I'm really pleased to have joining me Tara DeLeon, who is an amazing personal trainer, and we're going to have a chat about the importance of weightlifting and all of the things it can do for your body. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Tara. I'm excited to have this chat.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So maybe you can start by sharing your story and how did you get to be where you are now?
Yeah, it's a long one, but I'll give you the quick version.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I started out my fitness journey when I was a freshman in college. I'd been playing sports and stuff my whole life, so I've always been involved in fitness. But freshman year in college, I was like a business major. And I worked waiting tables at Outback Steakhouse, and I worked with a guy who was a personal trainer, and he was like, dude, you should do this. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I just like changed my entire trajectory, based on this guy's one suggestion. And it turned out to be a really great idea. I was clearly like made for this, but I switched my major. I started taking more health and fitness classes, exercise science classes. And then I just dove right in, and I've been training ever since.
That's awesome. I love that story. Like, oh, I'm going to go with it. That sounds great.
I'm very decisive, I've been told.
And
I just
here you are today, and you love it. I feel like one of my favorite things about you is you love what you do so much. It exudes from you. Like you could just tell.
I'm very passionate for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. So
what I love about it is it's like, it helps people. Like every single person in the world needs a personal trainer, myself included. Or at a minimum, we need some like guidance on how to be active in a safe way.
Yeah.
So it just feels like I'm doing the world a service by what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think everybody can get behind. So it makes it easy to be passionate about it.
Well, I like that you brought up like how to be active in a safe way, because maybe this is something you can speak on. I think, I know personally, like whenever I go to a gym, if I haven't worked out with a trainer in a while, I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do with these machines? What do I do with these weights? Like I can always do the cardio piece, and that's easy. But as I talk about a lot, cardio is not really the best thing to, keep your body functioning well. Like, sometimes it feels good, but like weights and lifting and, knowing how to do that kind of stuff really helps keep your body functioning better. Or maybe you can speak to this a little better than I can, but I feel like you could hurt yourself if you're not doing it the right way.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with all of that. Like cardio is great. If you want to go for like a walk every day, I'm super on board for everybody doing like gentle cardio, as much as possible. And stuff that's fun. Like I'm going to take the dog out for a walk. It doesn't have to be like kill yourself in a HIIT class kind of cardio. We just want to keep our body like kind of functioning properly. And to do that, we don't have to be crazy and hardcore.
Yeah, you can be, but I find in my practice that sometimes people really overdo it with the cardio, and then that leaves them feeling burnt out, or they get joint pain, or they, it can mess with your hormones if you're a female and a male. It sometimes as we get older and our stress is really high, your workouts, we don't want them to be as stressful as the rest of your life. You want them to be stress relieving.
Yes.
Which is why you brought up, if it's fun, that makes it stress relieving. But if you're killing yourself and you're like, oh God, I got to go to that Orange Theory class and I'm going to die. Might not be the best balance.
You could probably speak to this better than I could, but like stress is stress on the body. So
totally.
Whether it's good stress or bad stress, like your body kind of perceives it in a similar fashion. So if you're kind of stress free in the rest of your life and HIIT classes are your jam, like by all means. But like for most of us, I think life is kind of stressful. So, easing back on some of the higher intensity cardio, or only doing it maybe like once a week instead of 3 or 4 times a week, and then focusing more on weight training. Like weight training is amazing because it makes life easier. It's so functional. Like every time you sit down in a chair, sit down on the toilet, or get out of a low couch, like that's a squat. So people that come into the gym and they're like, oh, I can't do squats. Like, I'm pretty sure you do squats like multiple times a day.
Well, that's a good point. I never thought about that. Yep. So anytime you're getting up, or when you get out of bed, you're using all those muscles.
Yeah. You use your muscles all the time. So life just gets a little easier if they're a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And I think people get really scared when I talk about like weight training or strength training or lifting weights, because we all think of like the bodybuilder dudes that like don't even have a neck and they're big and scary. Like, what? We're not like that. We just want to lift enough weight to make our life better.
Yeah.
That's like really what my vibe is about.
I like that a lot. Well, and I think there's also something, and I know we've maybe talked about this on a panel before, but when you are stronger, you tend to feel better about your body, right? And just what you were just saying, like if life's a little bit easier and your body is moving freely, you feel better about your body. When you feel better about your body, you tend to make better choices in terms of taking care of it. Like, I feel like most of you guys listening can relate to this. Like, if you don't feel good and your body doesn't feel good, or if you feel kind of like blah, you're kind of like, well, what's the point? Like, I might as well go eat the donut and watch TV. Like, but if you're feeling like strong and energized and all these things, then you're more likely to be like, oh, I'm going to go take myself on a walk, or I'm going to make myself the healthy meal. Yes. I'm going to do something nice for myself. It's kind of weird that we're wired that way, but we just kind of are wired that way. So if you are putting in the work to get your body stronger, it's going to shift your whole mental game as well.
Totally. I frequently get the question, like, is it better to work out in the morning or in the evening? And the actual answer to that is whenever you'll do it is the best time.
Yeah.
But from that same thing you were just talking about, if you do it in the morning, it's going to like gear your entire day up to make better choices.
Yeah.
If you do it in the evening, it is like way easier to be like, ooh, happy hour does sound better than a gym workout, and get distracted with other fun stuff.
Yeah.
Which I'm not telling you to skip, but we also want to prioritize our fitness a little bit too.
Yeah. I actually, well, depending on what type of workout you're doing, I tend to recommend, when I get asked that question, to say that it is actually better for you to work out in the morning in terms of your circadian rhythms and whatnot. We tend to have more cortisol in the morning. Like, workouts tend to be easier for your body in the morning. And again, this may not be for everybody, but if you're doing like intense, hard workouts in the evening, it can start to disrupt your circadian rhythm a little bit for certain people. So
it'll totally mess your sleep up.
Yeah. And if that's, if again, to your point, like if that's the only time you can do it, and that, we're trying to build movement in, that's okay. But if you have the flexibility, perfect world, morning is usually the best, and to what you just said, like, you set up your day for being, your mindset's better. You're going to make better choices, and then you can go enjoy the happy hour and not have to worry about missing your workout.
Yep. It's already done.
It's already done.
Sets you up.
Yeah. So let's talk about, can you give us some of like the benefits of actual like weightlifting and building muscle? Cause again, I think some people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. Especially women are like, oh, I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to, maybe you can speak a little bit to that. Like,
yeah. So let me talk about the bulky thing first. Like, it's not going to happen unless you're taking a lot of supplements and things that are probably illegal. Like having women really bulk up is not common. Yeah. And I know people come in and tell me that all the time. They're like, I'm feeling bulky. This weight training program is bulking me up. And it's one of the reasons I do measurements on my clients, because, like, we can see if your bicep was 10 inches before and now it's like 9.5, you're not getting bulkier. I think where the disconnect is they might feel more muscular. Like, they might have a little bit more tone and more strength. So they feel like they look bigger. When in reality, they're actually smaller. So it's something that I tell people like not to worry about. It takes like a ridiculous amount of work to bulk up. And if you're a girl, it takes a lot of hormones and extra supplements and such. So definitely not something to worry about.
Well, I would also argue that maybe, or just say that in the, when you do start any sort of like exercise routine, in the beginning phases, your body might be a little bit swollen because you're breaking stuff down. So there might be a little bit of inflammation. So you might actually
there's inflammation for sure.
But you got to push through it and yeah. And the thing is, when you build more muscle, you burn more fat, like you burn more calories. Your basal metabolic rate goes up, which is, if you want to have a higher burn rate, that's what you need to do, is to build more muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That was going to be one of the big benefits to weight training, is it increases your basal metabolic rate. So you just burn more calories all the time without even having to think about it. Yeah. And I'm more of like a weight neutral, body positive personal trainer. So worrying about a lot of fat loss is not something that I do with my clients.
Yeah.
Frequently, every now and then I have somebody who's like, I gotta lose this weight, and that's fine. But it's not something that's common for me, but it tends to happen just naturally from people building more muscle.
Yeah. which is
huge
really cool.
benefit.
Yeah, giant
I think
benefit.
the biggest benefit of weight training is your self-confidence. Like when I tell people what I do, I usually say something along the lines of, I help people feel badass and confident by teaching them to lift heavy weights, which sounds like two totally separate things. Like body image and weightlifting are unrelated, but I kid you not, if you go in and like lift a heavy weight and, you know, do something that you perceive to be hard, like you can't have a bad day after that.
Yeah, because you feel so good about yourself. You're like, oh,
you're
look
feeling
what I did.
so good about it.
Yeah.
So I really feel like for women especially, so many of my clients deal with like body image issues and stress. And, you know, we're kind of like the ones that run the world, like moms run the world, I'm convinced. Yeah. And it's a lot of pressure. So going into the gym and lifting for half an hour, 45 minutes, kind of like gets you strong enough to deal with real life.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, then, and there's a lot of stuff to deal with in real life. So you can be like, all right. I don't know if anyone listens to Glennon Doyle's We Can Do Hard Things. I love that. I love her podcast and that message. Like, we can do hard things. So I feel like if you practice doing a hard thing physically, then you're like, all right, well, I was able to lift that thing or do this workout. Or then it's like, all right, well, then my screaming toddler or whatever else you have going on, you're like, I think I can manage this. I think I can.
Totally.
I can
sometimes like think back on like the hard things I've done in my life. For example, when I was in college, I went to school on Oahu in Hawaii.
I didn't know
and there are some islands that are like 1.25 miles offshore. And me and some of my friends just like on a whim decided to swim to the islands and back one day. And it was like completely stupid. And it's Hawaii and there's giant waves. And turns out that's like over a specific shark breeding ground. But we didn't know that, right? Because we were in college and invincible. So we just like swam to the islands. And then
how far was it? It was over 1 mile?
It was 1.25 miles. It's the Lanikai beach. Right off Lanikai, there's the Mokulua Islands. They're gorgeous. Highly recommend if any of you guys ever get to Hawaii. But we got to the beach and realized like, oh my gosh, it's like the sun is setting. We're either going to be here for the night or we have to like hurry ourselves up to get back to shore. So we were swimming at like the worst time possible. And somehow we made it. So whenever I get stuck in life and I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I tell myself like, hey, remember
you made it.
You swam to the Mokulua Islands and back when you had no business doing that. So you got this.
I like that that story because it brings up if you're able to like recall a hard physical thing that you've done, same thing, you can be like, all right, well, I got through that. I was crazy in my 20s and like to run marathons. I don't like to run marathons anymore, but every time I'm like, all right, you know what? You could run 26 miles. You've done this before. Like you can get through this. Like this really hard week, you could do it. You know, if you ran 26 miles, you crazy fool.
Totally. I love having something like that to fall back on. And honestly, even like, I deadlifted 95 pounds. Like, while that may not be like a ton of weight to some people, to other people, that's like ridiculously outside of their comfort zone. So just being able to fall back on that and being like, hey, I can do that. I can do this. Yeah. You know, I think it's really important. Builds resiliency.
Okay. So we talked about basal metabolic rate. We talked about boosting confidence. What was the other thing we talked about? With weightlifting,
like bulking up,
and bulking up. Wow. But what other benefits do you see from, or like reasons that people should weightlift?
Yeah. So another really big benefit is injury prevention. You know, especially as we're aging, you know, the more muscle you have, the more protective it's going to be for your joints. Right. So even if you were to have like some freak accident and slip on some ice in your driveway, if you've got a lot of like muscle around that joint, it's much less likely to be injured. And hip fractures, by the way, fun fact, hip fractures like kill more people every year than all the female cancers combined, which is so ironic because we have all these like walks for cancer, but we don't really have like walks for osteoporosis, which would practically like cure the problem.
Right? It definitely would. Well, and weightlifting helps prevent osteoporosis.
Yeah, totally. So if you're like a white or Asian female, you got to be weightlifting.
Yeah.
And the earlier the better, right? It's much easier to put on bone when you're in your like 20s.
What age would you say that like women should really start incorporating that into their, I mean, as soon as possible would that be your answer? Or?
As soon as possible. But like people ask me all the time, like how young is too young, like in terms of their kids. The real like answer there is you want to focus on form with your kids.
Got it.
Until they've hit puberty. Once they've hit puberty, then you can be like, all right, let's load up the bar.
Got it.
You know, but like my son is not even 3 and he knows how to like squat and deadlift just because he's seen me and daddy do it at home and he'll like want to be like us and go over and try it. And kids like naturally have this like amazing ability to just have perfect form. You know, like life hasn't messed him up yet. So somehow he'll like bend over to pick up the gallon of water with like perfect form.
That's cool.
So it's just all about technique until puberty.
Got it. Yeah.
That's
you
the
would want to be doing
recommendation.
heavy weights before puberty.
Yeah. Like, you know, some people do, but there's always like a risk of like damaging a growth plate or something. It's not as common of a problem as I think that the world thinks it is.
Yeah.
But, you know, like you don't really need to. That's really the time to like nail in on form so that when the time comes, you can just be like released. More commonly, I think, especially with like young female athletes, is they're not taught anything until they're like in high school. And then they're behind because they have to spend time like building that base and learning the technique when they could be making real progress ahead of that.
Gotcha.
You know?
Gotcha.
So as soon as possible.
Yeah. And when we say like weightlifting, like, because I'm just thinking about, I'm thinking selfishly about my current exercise routine. I do a lot of like Pilates and yoga, but I'm currently not doing much lifting. But if you're using your own body weight, could that count, or you really need to be doing
totally
extra?
Counts?
Okay, it does count.
Yep.
All right, good.
Totally counts.
Oh my God.
There's a couple like things to kind of consider, right? Like if we're doing yoga and we're in like a ton of planks or downward facing dogs and things, like our shoulders and core are probably really strong.
Yes.
But holding a pose, like let's say warrior for a minute or 5 minutes or whatever, is very different than like moving through a range of motion, like doing 10 squats. So I wouldn't say like only do yoga and Pilates and your needs will be met. But that's really a good way to start.
It's a good way to start. But so
it's also a good way to back it off if you've had an injury or something, or if life is just like really chaotic and you can't handle the stress of like actually lifting in the gym. Like by all means, back it down to like yoga or Pilates or both, and that will be absolutely sufficient to get you through that time.
Gotcha. Yeah, but you're saying like yoga, Pilates, and then having like 1 or 2 days a week where you're actually doing lifting would that be a good?
Yeah. Like if I were to
how often, what's the frequency of weightlifting? Let's say someone between age 35 and 50, female, what would be?
Yeah. So if I were to make like the perfect plan for that, like perfect world, I would probably have them lifting like twice a week, going for walks like 2 or 3 times a week, and doing like yoga or Pilates like once.
Oh, well, that sounds very doable. Like, that's not a lot. That's not super intense. It's not a lot, but that's enough to like keep you, and the walks will keep you mentally feeling good. But that's enough to keep your body feeling strong and preventing osteoporosis and increasing your metabolic rate. There's so many
all of that. I'm like a big fan of what I call the BAM, the bare ass minimum, because there's usually two schools of thought with personal trainers, right? We either have the people like me that do the bare ass minimum, or we have the people that go like absolutely 1,000%. Let's just go. And typically what I've found is the people that are all in are all out within 3 weeks. Well, it's just too overwhelming. And that's
a good point. I feel like, and this is kind of, and I'm sure everyone who's listening has experienced this at some point in their life, where you either like, you start a new healthy eating plan or a workout routine. And if you go like all the way, like so far in, it's not sustainable. So, maybe you do it for a month, maybe you do it for 6 weeks, but then you eventually fall off the wagon, and then you kind of fall really off the wagon. Versus if you do, I like that BAM analogy. If you're doing that, it's like, I can do this every week. Like even if it's stressful, I can still fit my walk in or fit my, quick workout with my trainer in, or, but if you're going.
And honestly, if you're starting from zero, like, oh my gosh, I haven't done anything forever. Even that workout that I described would be too much. I would start with like, hey, let's walk once a week and see how that goes. Yeah. And keep it up for like a month. And then if it goes well for that month, I would add in your second day and maybe like a lifting day. You want to do like, just little baby steps. I always say that little choices add up to big changes. Yeah. So if we make huge sweeping changes, all of a sudden it's going to add up to, I didn't do anything. But if we just go baby step, like the time's going to pass anyway. Yeah. So like we might as well stay consistent.
Yeah. I think the baby steps are, it's such a good reminder that that's what really adds up to the big changes.
I actually know this girl who, years and years ago, she wanted to like change her life, join a gym, get fit, all the things, And so she joined a gym, and for the first like 6 months of her being a member, she never even went in. She would go after work every day and just park in the parking lot and like scroll her phone for 10 minutes and then close her phone and drive home. Like that was all that she could do.
So she made it there. She drove there.
Yes. So like most of us, I think, would perceive that as like a fail. Like, girl, you didn't even go in, you know, like, what are you doing? You're paying for the gym. You could have done that for free, you know? But then after that, she finally like got up the courage to go in, and she would go in and like chat with the people at the front desk. And then she would turn around and leave. And after a month or so of doing that, she realized they had a hot tub. And so she would just come in and hot tub for half an hour, and then leave. And pretty soon it was like, okay, I'm going to try the treadmill for a couple minutes before the hot tub. And then after she'd been doing that for like a year, one of the trainers finally approached her and like, hey, do you want me to show you how to do like some of the machines? Anyway, long story short, she's now like a personal trainer and killing it.
Well, so
she, like,
I mean, that's a great story. I feel like she like slowly built that habit up. So she got into the routine of driving there. So it was like, that was already, but she didn't overdo. And this is, I think, with exercise too. And I know I've been guilty of this in the past, where I was like, all right, I'm going to go try this, whatever new workout fad. I'm going to go try it and I'll do it really hard for a week. And then I'm like, F that. That was too exhausting. I'm not going. Like, you burn yourself out. Totally. Like, I'm not going back. But she did it in like a very, like, she built it into her life. That's a cool story. I like
all
that.
About the baby steps.
Yeah. All about the baby steps. Yeah. And then look where she went with that.
Yeah.
That's
now she's
cool.
Changed like hundreds of people's lives because of, you know, her little baby step of stopping by the gym on her way home.
Stopping by the gym and scrolling through her phone. That's amazing.
Right? You never know where you're end up.
So true. It's so true. All right. So talk to me about like when you're working with a client, like how long are your sessions, or what does it typically look like if they're coming to do like a weightlifting session with you?
So almost all of my clients do weightlifting sessions. I have almost everybody on half-hour sessions. I really love a half an hour because you can hit it and quit it. Yeah. You know, just get in, get out. And half an hour, by the time you realize like, oh, this sucks, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, you're not really thinking about that. Plus, you know, I like to say that if people are training with me, we're like chatting the whole time and it's not like horrible. I'm distracting you from like the birds.
Yeah, from what's happening.
You know, but there are other trainers, right, that'll just like be super hyper focused and count the reps and all that. But I'm more of like, oh, let's chat about your weekend, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Also do your sets, you know, that kind of training environment. So typically I'll have people come and warm up on their own. I usually take the first session and teach them how to do a dynamic warm up. So teach them that, they come and do that on their own. And then we go and we jump right into weightlifting. There's a couple rules when you're weightlifting. You want to do the big muscle groups first. You want to do the things that are the most technical or dangerous first. And then if you work the front of your body, you want to work the back of your body. Doesn't have to be in the same day. It could be like in the same week, depending on how you have your program laid out. And the last rule is you must always breathe. So a typical like weight training program for a normal client age 35 to 50 who doesn't have many injuries would look something like, hey, let's start with squats. And then we're going to superset it with like an incline push-up. And so we'll do squats, push-ups, squats, push-ups, squats, push-ups. And then the next thing we might do is like an RDL and a barbell row. And go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then we'll do a little arm circuit, like bicep curls, shoulder press, tricep push downs, a core exercise, and then they're done.
Dude, that sounds pretty good.
So it's like 2 or 3 supersets of stuff or little circuits, and then that's it.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Like
short and sweet. You know, it feels like intense because you're not really resting.
Yeah. But it's only 30 minutes.
Yes, it's only 30 minutes. One of the rules with weight training that I didn't mention is you have to rest that muscle group. And I think where people get really confused with this is they're like, oh, rest means I'm not doing anything. When in reality, what it means is that muscle group that you just worked needs to not do anything, but everything else is fair game. Right. So in that superset of squats and push-ups, right, when you squat, that's a lot of core, a lot of lower body, but it's not a lot of upper body. Yeah. When we do push-ups, it's a lot of chest and arms, a little bit of core, but not much lower body. Gotcha. Right. So that's why we can kind of pair those together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And not waste time. Mm-hmm. I've also noticed that women hate resting.
Yeah,
which is weird because if you ask us, we're totally going to be like, oh, I love rest and relaxation.
Oh,
but
no.
in the gym, we totally don't.
No, women don't really women are not wired to relax. Well, at least my clients aren't wired. Like, I don't know how to relax. I don't know how to sit down. And because I'm usually I'm like, you need to take a break. You need to lay on the couch. And they're like, wait, what? I can't do that. I need to be able to go all the time. I think
we have no idea how to
be
do it.
Busy. And we all want, but it's funny. We all dream about relaxing. We're like, oh, I wish I was on the beach reading a book. But then when it actually comes to put into practice, we're like, wait, I feel uncomfortable. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm like, you just want me to like lay down?
Absolutely.
That feels a little weird. Like in the middle of the day. What are you talking about?
It feels unproductive.
That feels
it's
so
uncomfortable for us.
There's so many things I could be doing: laundry and dishes and kids and work and But
so at the gym, women will like die if I say, "Hey, we're going to stand here and rest for 90 seconds." You can see them after like 15 seconds, like, "Okay,
what's next?
I'm paying you for this time. Sorry, did we just wasting this or?"
But the rest is important. It's important, obviously, for muscle recovery. I mean, it's important in a lot of different ways for your health. Like,
super important.
Yeah, arguably, probably, I would argue it's actually more important. You got to do the work, but then the rest is that's when the body actually repairs things. That's when the body that's when the body's going to like reshape yourself.
It takes 2 minutes to regenerate your adenosine triphosphate. Yeah. And that's what causes muscle action, right? So if we can't take the time to regenerate that, like you're not going to be able to lift your next set.
Yeah.
But the way that I kind of combat that like anxiety over movement would be like with supersetting with some other unrelated exercise, like push up and a squat.
Yeah. So then they're not having to do that like full on rest.
And you get through your workout twice as fast.
Probably good practice for them to take the 90-second rest because that's like a little micro rest practice that they could then bleed into the rest of their lives. Well, I can take 90 seconds to chill out.
I actually like set the timer for that because if I say like, okay, we're going to rest for 90 seconds, people get 20 seconds in and they're like, that was like a minute, right?
It's like, nope, 20
not
seconds.
Even close.
20 seconds. Oh my goodness. So, all right. What else do you want to share about weightlifting, working out, body positivity? What else you got? I know you got a lot of stuff in there.
I got so much stuff in here. I'm trying to think of what the most helpful thing for your listeners might be. I really think like the biggest takeaway from today would be like, do less than you think you have to.
I like that. Yeah.
I think we all think we have to go so hard on everything.
Yeah.
And it gets overwhelming. So then we don't do anything.
Yeah.
But if we just take like that baby step to get it started and then maintain that for however long, like, you're going to see huge results from that.
Well, I think your message is also like consistency, like, whether it's the walk once a week or what you described, like the workout, with a trainer twice a week, the Pilates once a week, the walk, like it's staying consistent, even if it's just a little bit of a practice, like that's where you're going to really see results. It's those baby steps and being consistent with them. And usually when you are consistent with baby steps, they'll build upon themselves. And before you know it, you'll be like, oh, I'm working out every day and I feel good. And you'll be like that woman who went to the gym and now she's a personal trainer changing lives.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
But
consistency is the secret to success.
It's
like 100%. No matter what you're doing.
Yes. Whether it's about your body or your business or your kids or your relationship, if you're consistent, that's what it takes. And it's hard.
Absolutely.
Sometimes that's not easy for us as humans because we're like, do I have to keep doing that? But I feel like once you are practiced at consistency in one area of your life, which I think is why being consistent with exercise helps you with confidence in somebody, because you're like, you practice consistency. You're like, oh, I can be consistent with my diet, or I can be consistent in my relationship, or I can be consistent with my marketing for my social media, or whatever. I recently was talking to somebody who was building a business, and she was asking me about marketing, and I was like, you just have to be consistent. It's the same thing with anything. Like, you want to market, and you want it to work for your business, you got to be consistent.
Yes, I hate hearing that because I'm also trying to like build my business a little bit differently. I've got some kind of exciting things coming up and I'm realizing I have to do more social media and I don't want to.
It literally just takes consent, just like the exercise. It in baby steps, just baby steps. You just do, okay, I'm going to post once a week and I'm going to do that every week, or I'm going to send a newsletter once a week or whatever it is.
Yep.
So you just got to be consistent. So what are these exciting things you've got going on? Do you want to share about them?
Sure. Nothing is ready yet. So
I know you've got your podcast. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I have a podcast that I do with Elizabeth Harris and Maria Winters. Elizabeth Harris is a dietitian who specializes in intuitive eating. So she's the non-diet dietitian.
She's awesome. She's been on the show. it was early on. It was in the first year. I'll look up the episode. We'll put it in the show notes, but it was a great episode.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I'm sure that would be awesome to listen to. And then Maria Winters, who is a therapist.
Yep.
So we kind of tackle wellness. It's called Wellness Rebranded, and we kind of look at it through the lens of what is actually wellness as opposed to what society tells us wellness is.
I love that.
So we confront things like diet culture, like hustle culture, kind of leaning into moving your body in a way that feels good rather than a way that punishes you, right? Not going on the super strict diet, but eating foods that make you feel good and fuel your body appropriately, things like that. So that's
amazing.
Always good. We just hit our 30th episode last week.
Awesome. Congrats.
So apparently we're top 2% of all podcasts in the world, which I can't even believe that that's a thing.
Yeah, I think if you make it past there's if you make it past 20 episodes or something, you get in this.
Yeah, you're in the top of whatever.
Takes consistency too, as you I'm sure are learning. You've got to be consistent. You've got to record. It's thank God there's teams that help with putting shows out there, but you've got to be consistent, or the show's not going to go on.
Absolutely. So that's pretty exciting. My husband, when I told him that, he was like, "Wait, so there's Joe Rogan, and then 1.9% of all other podcasts, and then you." And then 98% of everybody else. And I was like,
I think so,
yeah. I guess that's how it is. So that's pretty exciting. But I'm also writing a book.
Amazing.
So it's going to be geared towards it's going to be geared towards moms in general. I had an epiphany on my son's first birthday. I was in the shower and I looked down and I was like, oh my God, how long has it been since I've shaved my legs? And I kind of had a pep talk with myself, okay, it's been a year. You've got to get your life together. And so this is the book that I kind of needed, when Mavs was little. So it's going to talk about, exercise. It's going to talk about nutrition and feeding your family. It's going to talk about stress management. It's going to talk about life management.
Love it.
Think of it like a self-care meets parenting kind of book. And I'm going to do a series of workshops that are based on that.
Awesome.
And those will be live and online. So that'll be kind of fun. And then eventually the idea is to kind of package it and sell it it's called the Hot Mess Express, from hot mess to hot mom.
I love it. That's so fun.
It'll be the hot mom's guide to,
everything.
Whatever. Everything.
All right. Well, I think that's very much needed.
So that's certainly what I needed. So I decided to create it.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. Well, that's exciting. So definitely go check out her show. If you guys are local and they're interested in working with you, where can they find you?
So I'm at Edgewater Fitness. I'll have you link my contact info in the show notes, but I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and I also work with people virtually all over the world. So even if you're not local and you want to hit me up, I got you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a great episode, and I hope you guys learned some stuff. I might need to come schedule with you to get some weightlifting back into my life. I'm not currently doing it.
Come on in.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was great. Everyone go check her out, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.